Hi everyone, I'm Zhonglin. After World War One, the Central Powers surrendered due to the endless resources blockade by the other Allied powers, which led to the domestic violence inside their empires. There is a peace conference that should be held directly in order to navigate the future of the world, including the cost of the reparations, the draw of the borders, and most importantly, how to deal with the losing countries. Therefore, every leader across the globe decided to meet together in Paris, France, for 6 months to deal with the issues. In this book, Macmillan will take us to a deeper dive into events that happened during the peace conference and understand the reasons behind every move by different nations. So let's dive into the book. So first of all, which is one of the most controversial and questionable parts of the book that led to historical debates online and offline, was the main argument itself. She debunked the myth that the Treaty of Versailles was the main factor that triggered the World War II itself. Instead, it was because of the leaders who were exhausted in enforcing the rules on the Treaty of Versailles that triggered the war to happen. Well, you can see the specific evidence that showcased the main argument in the conclusion, where she argued that in the West, Germany also faced an advantageous situation. France was greatly depleted by the war, unwilling and by the 1930s, increasingly unable to summon up the determination to oppose Germany. The guarantee from the United States and Britain was worthless after a failure of the American Senate to ratify. This can fully demonstrate the evidence that the guarantee was worthless for France because the Senate and the Parliament were overwhelmed by the harsh enforcement that were listed on the Treaty of Versailles, which led to the inevitability of the war. Additionally, the main reason why this argument sparked up the debates was because she argued that Germany wasn't really affected by the treaty of itself. Well, it became the weakness of the book itself. What author was trying to refer is that the Nazis' Germany regime around the 1930s, but excludes the immediate effects that were brought to the new democratic government, the Weimar Republic. Professor Quall directly challenged Macmillan's argument by arguing, however, the Treaty of Versailles backfired on the Allied powers and the rest of the world, as the strict demands inspired German nationalism. In effect, the Treaty of Versailles inspired Germany to reignite its military, leading to the rise of Hitler and Germany's power during the World War II. It was true, though. Why won't you want to gain back your own national pride if your country was completely excluded from the treaty itself? However, other historians still take a nuanced view towards the treaty itself. According to Neighbor on Historic.com, he argued that a treaty produces a different outcome, yes, but you shouldn't draw the inevitability. It's part of the recipe, but it's not the only ingredients. Since World War II occurred 20 years after the peace treaty was signed, therefore, it was significantly important to consider other factors that triggered the war itself too. Therefore, it somehow supports Macmillan's argument that the Treaty of Versailles didn't directly cause the World War II. Other factors shall also be considered throughout the 20 years span, such as the Great Depression, the Nazis' invasion, and also other stuff that happened throughout the 20 years span. But nevertheless, the debates still remain one of the most controversial parts of the story. Well, although the main argument itself was weak, but somehow the book's historical facts are accurate. Especially she involved the main characters, which are the big three, Joseph Clemenceau, David Lloyd George, and Woodrow Wilson. Involved in every part, every decision, and every draw of the borders in the story, which is the main advantage of the story. Since she debunked the truth of the tree itself, but it was completely transparent that she also included the controversy during the conference itself, including the 14 points, which sparked up the debates throughout the entire story. It especially angered Clemenceau and Lloyd George, since the 14 points was the one that promoted the self-determination of the nations across the world, which was about every ethnicity should become a nation state, not a colony itself. Clemenceau and Lloyd George hated it because they were afraid of losing their territories that were gained in the past 2 centuries. Losing it will affect their powers in Europe. However, the main point that I'm focusing on was still about Germany. Wilson's view on Germany led to a frustration from Clemenceau, as, as he left an infamous quote that said, Mr. Wilson bores me with his 14 points. God Almighty has only 10. This quote challenges Woodrow Wilson's point of view that Germany will rise from the world's leading power in a few years, as he strongly believes that it will take Germany several decades or centuries to beat back from the world's leading power. It was true, though. The conversation between the big three regarding on Germany's rise of power fully demonstrates Clemenceau's view on compressing Germany's power to lowest as possible. In the conversation between the big three, I found it on the US government side. He argued that it was useless to ask for explanations, as the Germans will only say that he had falsified the document. His view was that nothing should be done to delay the signature of peace. All he would do today was to write to the Germans on the questions on the sinking of the ships and the burning of the flags. The Pol the Polish affair would grow in a day or two and give ample reasons for action. This can fully support Clemenceau's view on Germany that all he wanted to do is not allow Germany to gain access to any military supplies or mobilization, so they wouldn't attack France anymore. And Germany's rise will be several decades later, or maybe even take centuries. This is considered one of the most important pieces of evidence that showcase the book's historical accuracy, which is one of the reasons why it is part of the advantages of his story. Okay, lastly, in my own opinion, although I strongly believe that the main argument is a bit vague and unreasonable, I still uphold my own opinion that this book is one of the best modern historical narratives in the world so far, especially the author's literary techniques that it brought to make the nonfiction much more engaging, which is the use of building tensions. The author also use dialogues and the distinctive use of descriptive languages to build on the tension significantly throughout the main issues that we're trying to deal with. Specifically in Orlando's departure from peace conference as Italy's delegation, racial equality clause from Japan, and Central Europe's border crisis. Furthermore, I'd like to recommend this book to people who love chaos, intensive debates, and arguments, especially to emulators, since this book also includes the debate techniques and strategies that were significantly important for dealing with the amendments, clauses, and resolutions as a whole. Therefore, reading this book could enhance your debate skills and solidify your knowledge on the techniques, on the persuasiveness in your speech significantly. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time.